So we were just working on page 51, and Lacan has connected the symbolic to a game. Now, what do we know about games? Let's just think about this for a second. Games have rules, and once you decide to play a game, call it checkers, Monopoly, Risk, Cards Against Humanity, whatever your game is, as soon as you start playing a game with someone else, the assumption there is that everybody agrees to share the same rules of that game. The game isn't going to work if you're playing by one set of rules and somebody else is playing by another. The symbolic is all the rules that allow us to play the game of society. That's what the symbolic is. It is a collection of all the rules that allow us to play the game of life, of society. Now, there are lots of different kinds of rules. Lacan's point here is that one of the first and foremost rules of such a game is positionality. When you're playing Monopoly and you choose your character, all these little silver metal pieces, are you going to be the shoe? Are you going to be the car? Are you going to be the galloping horse? Are you going to be the iron? What are you going to be? How are you going to move around the board? Where are you going to allow the dice of the game to place you? These are all the rules of the game. You want to know where the symbolic is in Monopoly? It's in the manual of how to play the game, the rules of how to play the game. Now, what's the real in this analogy? The real is the actual board that can be folded up, put into the fireplace, and burnt. It's the pieces themselves, made of metal, that can be melted in the same fire and used to make, a wristwatch. That's the real. It's the material structure of the box. It's the paper bills that you used to make the fire in the first place. Seriously, if you haven't sat down and burnt a $500 bill from a Monopoly set, you're missing out. My point is that the real is the material of which the game is made. It's the red paint on Indiana. It's the stack of yellow cards in Community Chest. It's the stack of orange cards. It's the ink on the page. That's the real. It's the material elements, the physical elements that go into the makeup of the game. The symbolic is all the rules that structure the game. Now, where's the imaginary at the level of the game? Well, if we just stick with the game of Monopoly, it's the reason why you chose to be the race car. Because you think of yourself as somebody who's fast, who likes to get the job done, who always rolls with the top down. It's the reason you chose the iron. Or, as some little kids oftentimes think, the shield. Because if you turn that iron up on its side, it looks like a shield. And you might say, oh yeah, because I'm a fighter. Or it might be, no, because I fancy myself a maid, a servant, a homemaker. Maybe instead you choose the galloping horse because you fancy yourself courageous. Now what do? You roll the dice and you land on Connecticut. And you think to yourself, damn, I'm from Connecticut. I feel connected to that. It'd be a shame if I didn't buy it. These are all imaginary identifications that your ego experiences with a certain piece, and that your ego experiences when a certain piece lands on a certain place in the board. You feel connected to that. You land on go to jail, and at some deep level you might think to yourself, yeah, I'd cheat if I could. I probably deserve to go to jail. You land on free parking, and you think, man, if only that were the case. I work so hard. I'm the kind of person who always looks for free parking whenever I'm in the city. That's the imaginary. So the real is what the board is made out of, the metal that makes the pieces, the paper, the ink, all this stuff. The symbolic is the rules of the game that everybody pretty much has to agree to in order for the game to function. You can change the rules, but usually when you change the rules in a game like Monopoly, you have to have a conversation about it. And everybody has to agree in order for the game to go forward smoothly. That's the symbolic. The imaginary are the feelings you have towards the car, towards the iron, towards any particular property or experience that might occur on the game. The identifications or dissociations or disidentifications that happen when you land on certain properties. So it's important here that he's bringing up the game because it gives us a good opportunity to illustrate these three othernesses that we've been talking about: real, symbolic, and imaginary. The game metaphor continues through page 52, which brings us back to where we started here on page 56. These three othernesses: real, symbolic, and imaginary. You've heard a lot so far about these. I would encourage you to A, look up real, imaginary, and symbolic in the Dylan Evans Dictionary. B, think about the way that they've been discussed in these few lectures. And then C, if you start losing track, think about the game of Monopoly. Think about what we've talked about here at the level of the game. Thanks. I'll see you next time.